You're wrong about something right now. I'm wrong about something right now. Everyone in this room wrong about something. Not a little bit wrong. Completely confidently wrong. And here's the really interesting part. We're working very hard to stay wrong. I don't mean we're stupid. I mean something much more precise. Your brain is running a specific process, measurable, consistent, predictable, that protects your current beliefs from contradictory evidence. It happens automatically. It's happening right now as you read this. And understanding how it works is one of the most important things you can do if you want to think clearly about anything. Let me show you the problem. Solomon Asch did this experiment in 1951. Simple setup: put a person in a room with 7 other people, show everyone 2 cards, first card 1 vertical line, second card 3 vertical lines labeled A, B, and C. Line B is obviously the same length as the line on the first card. Obviously the difference is visible, measurable, clear. Question which line matches. Now here's the trick. The other 7 people are working with Asch. They all say line A, out loud, confidently, before you answer. What happens? 75% of people go along with the wrong answer at least once. 1 in 3 people conform to the obviously incorrect group answer most of the time. They're not guessing. They're not confused about what they see. They're overriding what their eyes tell them because everyone else disagrees. You might think weak-minded people. I wouldn't do that. Wrong. Unless you've been in this exact situation, you don't know what you'd do. And the mechanism Asch discovered is operating in you constantly, in ways much harder to detect than comparing line lengths. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. You have approximately 86 billion neurons. Each neuron connects to thousands of others. Every thought, every memory, every belief you hold exists as a pattern of activation across these connections. And here's the critical part. These patterns are physical structures. They're real. They exist in the same way a bridge exists, a crystal exists, a mountain exists. When you believe something, really believe it, your brain has constructed a network to support that belief. Neurons that fire together wire together. That's not a metaphor. That's Donald Hebb's rule from 1949, and it's physically measurable. The synaptic connections literally strengthen. The belief becomes structurally reinforced in your neural architecture. Now you encounter evidence that contradicts your belief. What happens? Your brain doesn't evaluate this evidence neutrally. It can't. The existing structure resists change, and not for mysterious reasons, for thermodynamic reasons. Breaking down existing neural pathways and building new ones requires energy, lots of it. Your brain uses 20% of your body's energy budget while being 2% of your body weight. It is expensive to run. Restructuring beliefs is metabolically costly. So your brain does something much cheaper. It distorts the incoming information to fit the existing structure. This is confirmation bias. And it's not a thinking error. It's an energy-saving mechanism. Your brain is optimizing for efficiency, not truth. Let me give you the numbers on how powerful this is. Raymond Nickerson reviewed the research in 1998. When people evaluate evidence relevant to their beliefs, they spend 36% more time examining confirming evidence than disconfirming evidence. They recall confirming evidence 23% more accurately. They rate confirming evidence as 47% more credible on average. Same methodology, same source reliability, different conclusion. Here's the really troubling part. The smarter you are, the better you are at this. Lisa Feldman Barrett's work on constructed emotion shows that people with higher cognitive ability generate more sophisticated justifications for dismissing contradictory evidence. Intelligence doesn't protect you from confirmation bias. It weaponizes it. You're better at finding reasons why you're right. Dan Kahan at Yale measured this directly. He gave people math problems, calculating whether a skin cream worked based on numerical data, simple arithmetic. Then he gave them the same mathematical problem, but framed it as gun control data. People who scored high on numerical reasoning solved the neutral problem correctly 86% of the time. Good. But when the correct answer contradicted their political beliefs, accuracy dropped to 47%, below chance. They were getting the math wrong in politically motivated ways, and they were confident about it. The mechanism is precise. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that does conscious reasoning, doesn't operate independently. It's connected to your amygdala, which processes emotional significance, and your nucleus accumbens, which processes reward. When you encounter information confirming your beliefs, your nucleus accumbens activates. You get a dopamine hit, literally. Drew Weston put people in fMRI machines and showed them statements contradicting their political beliefs, then showed them ways to dismiss those statements. The reasoning circuits barely activated, the emotional circuits lit up, and when people successfully dismissed the contradictory information, their reward circuits activated. They felt good. You are pharmacologically rewarded for maintaining existing beliefs and dismissing contradictory evidence. Your brain is treating belief confirmation like food, like sex, like anything else that triggers dopamine release. This isn't a bug. From an evolutionary perspective, it's a feature. Rapid belief change is dangerous. Your tribe believes X. You suddenly believe not X. Social cohesion breaks. You get kicked out. You die. Natural selection favored brains that stick to tribal beliefs. But here's what natural selection didn't prepare you for. Living in a world where your beliefs about reality matter more than your beliefs about tribal membership. Your ancestor needed to believe what the tribe believed to survive. You need to believe true things about climate change, vaccination, economic policy, technology, domains where reality doesn't care about consensus. And reality is utterly indifferent to your beliefs. Absolutely indifferent. You can believe vaccines cause autism. Mercury doesn't care. You can believe the Earth is flat. Gravity doesn't care. You can believe you're not subject to confirmation bias. Your neurons don't care. They're firing in patterns determined by prior structure, not by logical evaluation of evidence. Now, you might say, I evaluate evidence rationally. I change my mind when I'm wrong. Do you? Really? Let me test that. Think of a belief you hold strongly. Political, scientific, personal, doesn't matter. Now ask yourself, what evidence would change your mind? Be specific, not really strong evidence, or if I saw proof, name the exact observation, the specific study, the particular data that would make you say I was wrong. Can't name it. That's the problem. If no possible evidence would change your mind, you don't hold a belief, you hold an identity. And identities don't change from evidence. They change from social pressure, trauma, or slow erosion over years. Here's where it gets worse. There's a second mechanism working against you, motivated reasoning. This is different from confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is about which evidence you notice. Motivated reasoning is about how you process evidence you can't ignore. Ziva Kunda demonstrated this in 1990. She told people about a study linking caffeine to breast cancer. Then she asked them to evaluate the study's methodology. People who drank lots of coffee found more flaws in the methodology. Same study, same data, different conclusion based on whether the conclusion threatened them personally. The process is automatic. Your brain identifies, this evidence threatens something I want to be true. Then it searches for any reason at all, to discount the evidence. Flawed methodology, suspicious funding, correlation not causation, small sample size. Your reasoning ability is recruited not to evaluate truth, but to defend your desired conclusion. And here's the mechanism. Your prefrontal cortex is asking, can I believe this when evaluating evidence you like, and must I believe this when evaluating evidence you don't like? Different standards. The first question is easy to satisfy. The second is hard. So confirming evidence gets through. Disconfirming evidence gets blocked. Charles Lord studied this in 1979. He showed people studies about capital punishment, some supporting its effectiveness, some opposing it. People on both sides read the same studies. What happened? Both sides became more convinced of their original position. Same evidence, opposite conclusions. They evaluated pro-death penalty studies charitably when they supported capital punishment, skeptically when they opposed it, and vice versa. The evidence didn't change anyone's mind. It polarized them further. This is called the backfire effect. Present people with facts contradicting their beliefs, and they don't update their beliefs, they strengthen them. They find reasons to dismiss your facts, and the act of generating those reasons reinforces the original belief. Now let me show you how deep this goes. Michael Gazzaniga studied split-brain patients, people whose corpus callosum was severed, disconnecting left and right hemispheres. You can show the right hemisphere a command, walk. The person stands up and walks. You ask the left hemisphere, which controls speech, why did you stand up? The left hemisphere didn't see the command, but it doesn't say, I don't know. It confabulates. I was going to get a soda. I needed to stretch. It generates an explanation, confident, immediate, wrong. Your left hemisphere is an explanation machine. It takes whatever you're doing and generates a plausible story for why you're doing it. It doesn't have access to the real causes, unconscious processes, emotional reactions, neural patterns, but it doesn't say, I don't know. It confabulates. And you believe the confabulation. You believe your own press releases. Every belief you hold has a story attached. You believe X because of reasons Y and Z. But those reasons, your left hemisphere generated them after you already believed X. The belief came first. The reasons came second. But they feel like the reasons came first. That's the illusion. Antonio Damasio studied patients with damage to ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the connection between reasoning and emotion. These patients can reason logically. They score normally on IQ tests. But they can't make decisions. They spend hours choosing between two breakfast cereals. They can list pros and cons endlessly, but can't commit. Why? Because decision-making requires emotion. You need to feel which option is right. Reason generates options. Emotion selects between them. So when you think you believe something because of logical reasons, you're wrong. You believe it because it feels right. Then your reasoning mind generates justifications. And because you have access to the justifications but not the feelings, you think the justifications came first. Jonathan hates metaphor. Reason is the rider. Emotion is the elephant. The elephant goes where it wants. The rider's job is to explain why the elephant was right to go there. The rider thinks he's steering. He's not. He's the elephant's press secretary. Now here's where this gets really problematic. Science is supposed to fix this. Science is the method we invented to overcome confirmation bias, motivated reasoning, all of it. You form hypotheses, test them, follow the data wherever it leads, right? Except scientists are humans. They have brains running the same processes, and the history of science is full of scientists who couldn't abandon wrong theories despite contradictory evidence. Albert Einstein never accepted quantum mechanics. He spent 30 years trying to prove it wrong, not because of the evidence. The evidence supported quantum mechanics because he couldn't reconcile it with his belief that God does not play dice. His words, he prioritized his belief about how reality should work over evidence about how it actually works. Fred Hoyle never accepted the Big Bang. He mocked it. That's where the name came from. He meant it derisively. He developed steady-state theory and defended it long after cosmic microwave background radiation confirmed the Big Bang. Why? He found the idea of a beginning philosophically repugnant. These aren't stupid men. Einstein is Einstein. Hoyle predicted stellar nucleosynthesis, but they couldn't change their minds. The neural architecture was too entrenched. The beliefs were load-bearing structures in their worldview. Removing them would collapse everything. And this is the terrifying part. If Einstein and Hoyle couldn't overcome this, what chance do you have? What chance do I have? Well, there's good news and bad news. Bad news first, you can't eliminate confirmation bias. You can't turn it off. It's not a software bug you can patch. It's the operating system. Your brain is doing what brains do. You will believe what you want to believe. You will distort evidence. You will confabulate reasons. This is guaranteed. But here's the good news. You can design around it. You can build systems that correct for known biases. That's what science actually is. Not individual scientists being objective. There's no such thing. But communities of scientists who check each other's work, replicate findings, require public data, make predictions that could be falsified. The system corrects what individuals can't. Richard Feynman. Yes, I'm talking about myself in third person. I'm aware how that sounds. I said the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. I meant it. I fool myself constantly. I have to work very, very hard not to. Here's what works. Adversarial collaboration. Find someone who disagrees with you. Not to debate them, to collaborate with them. Design an experiment together. Agree in advance what result would prove you wrong. Then run it. Let them check your work. You check theirs. This forces you to make falsifiable predictions. It prevents moving goalposts. It's the only reliable way I know to overcome motivated reasoning. Another thing that works, separate hypothesis generation from hypothesis testing. When you're generating ideas, be creative. Entertain anything. But when you're testing them, be ruthless. Actively try to prove yourself wrong. Darwin did this. He kept a notebook specifically for observations that contradicted his theory. He forced himself to address them. Most scientists do the opposite. They keep notebooks of confirming evidence. Philip Tetlock studied expert predictions. He tracked thousands of predictions over 20 years. Result, Experts were barely better than chance, except one group, the foxes, people who updated their beliefs frequently based on new evidence. They crushed it. The hedgehogs, people with one big theory they defended, they were worse than random, because they used new information to justify their existing theory rather than test it. So, here's what you do. Keep a prediction journal. Write down what you believe will happen. Be specific. Include dates. Then check it. When you're wrong, figure out why. Not why you were sort of right, or why it's more complicated, why you were wrong. Force yourself to say, I was wrong because I believed X and X is false. It's excruciating. Your brain will fight you. It'll generate 20 reasons why you were actually kind of right. Ignore them. You were wrong. Say it, write it down. This is the only way to update neural structures that resist updating. One more thing, understand that beliefs aren't just beliefs. They're social identity markers. You don't just believe in climate change or free markets or God. Those beliefs signal which tribe you belong to. Changing them feels like betrayal. Your brain interprets it as dangerous, so you need to separate beliefs from identity. How? Hold beliefs tentatively. Say, given current evidence, I think X instead of I believe X. That tiny linguistic shift creates psychological space. It tells your brain, this isn't who you are. This is your current best model. Models update. That's what models do. And when you encounter someone who believes something you think is obviously wrong, remember, they have the same brain you do. They're running the same processes. They're not stupid. They're not evil. They're stuck in a neural pattern that resists change exactly like you are on different topics. You want them to change. Don't argue. Don't present evidence. That'll backfire. Ask questions. Find out what would change their mind. Ask what they predict will happen if they're right. Make predictions falsifiable. Then wait. Reality is a harsh teacher, but she's effective. Look, here's the bottom line. Your brain didn't evolve to believe true things. It evolved to believe useful things, things that helped your ancestors survive and reproduce. Truth was useful when it overlapped with survival. When it didn't, survival won. That's why you believe what you want. You want to believe things that protect your social status, your self-image, your worldview, and your brain delivers. But you live in a world now where believing true things matters, where being wrong about climate, about economics, about technology has consequences. So you have to fight your own brain. You have to build systems that force you to face uncomfortable evidence. You have to make falsifiable predictions and check them. You have to actively look for reasons you might be wrong. It won't feel natural. It'll feel awful because you're fighting millions of years of evolution. But it's the only way to believe things because they're true, not because you want them to be true. And that difference between believing what's true and believing what's comfortable, that's the difference between living in reality and living in a fantasy that'll eventually crash into reality and destroy you. You're still wrong about something right now. So am I. The question is, are we going to find out what, or are we going to defend our wrongness until reality forces the issue? That's not a rhetorical question. It's the most important choice you make every day with every belief you hold. And it's a choice, which means you can make it differently starting now.